Board of Health is.
Exactly.
Good evening, everyone. Just for procedural purposes, the Board of Selectmen have a posted meeting at 7 o'clock because they're sitting together, so the Board of Selectmen is in session.
Also, the Board of Health has posted a meeting, as we are here as well, so we'll call our meeting to order.
Okay, it's 7:04. Oh, sorry. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Where's the first? Okay, could I have roll call, all members?
John Glenn.
Brian Canty.
John Julian.
George Slingo
William LePage. Roger DuBois.
and for the record, Billy LePage is an alternate. Okay. First on the public hearing is...
Excuse me, Mr. Slingo, I can't hear you. Can you move the page?
Okay, sorry. Where's the first? That's not it. So we're going to the cemetery. First on the, is a public hearing for Islamic Society of Greater Worcester. Applicant is seeking a special permit for a cemetery on Corbin Road, map 210, parcel 017 in Dudley, Mass. Burberry comes out tonight. Yeah. Excuse me, could you please sign in and identify yourself for the record?
For the record, my name is Imad Zurain from Develop Zurain, civil engineer, and with me tonight is Jay Talman, our attorney, and Khalid Sadouzeh is the president of the Islamic Society of Greater Worcester. I guess first, I'd like to have our attorney at least do the first part of the presentation, and I'll do the technical part.
Good evening. My name is Jay Tallerman. I'm with the law firm of Blattman, Bobrowski, Mead, and Tallerman. We are primarily a municipal law firm. We represent a lot of cities and towns, and we do a lot of land use work. I'm representing the applicant, the Islamic Society of Greater Worcester, on this special permit application. Me coming to represent them is somewhat ironic. I am town council in the town of Douglas, and we had a similar application before the zoning board there just a year ago with the same applicant, and had to deal with many of the same issues and the same questions that I'm sure you'll be faced with here tonight. So I'd like to help speak about those. Imad is going to speak to most of the technical issues, and I'll defer to him on those, but I did want to set the table a little bit on some of the legal posture and some of the major issues that we will be discussing tonight. As you're likely aware, Section 3 of Chapter 40A, which is so-called Dover Amendment, provides a substantial amount of exemptions for religious uses. This extends to cemeteries, and there's recent case law on that, which I'm happy to provide. In fact, I'm sure your town council, Mr. Brackett, already has a copy. But I'll provide a copy of a more recent case that talks directly about religious cemeteries and the exemptions under the Dover Amendment. So what does that mean, exemptions from zoning? Well, it largely means that for zoning purposes, for religious uses and structures, there is no ability to say no. And as someone who has to deal with Dover Amendment applications, whether they be educational, religious, solar, daycare facilities, or any of the other uses under the Dover Amendment, that can be frustrating at times. But it doesn't mean that there is no say by the Zoning Board of Appeals. In fact, the Dover Amendment process provides for a lot of robust review by the Zoning Board of Appeals. While that review stops short of being able to deny a project that is reasonably presented, it does give you the ability to reasonably regulate. And that's what the statute said. Well, what does that mean, reasonably regulate? Well, it is somewhat of a constrained review, but it does allow you to reasonably regulate or to ensure that a project meets certain basic criteria, mostly with respect to public safety issues or dimensional criteria. For example, as would be applicable for a project like this, it would give you the authority to reasonably regulate or to ensure that the project has adequate assurances for parking, which we are going to be discussing in a little bit when we go through the plans. It could include an assurance that emergency vehicles could easily access the site and have an opportunity to turn around in the event of an emergency. We'll be discussing that as well. It might include consideration of such issues as building setback. For example, a lot of Dover uses would say, well, I can get right up to that property line, but you have the ability to consider those in relationship to other buildings. Now, in this case, there are no buildings. We are proposing no structures whatsoever, so that issue is somewhat moot. You might be able to consider issues regarding proper drainage to prevent flooding. That issue also will be dealt with easily here today. It's a large site, and there's going to be very little concerns with respect to drainage. Beyond those simple issues, there isn't really not a lot of regulation that the zoning board need to enter into with respect to this. Now, all that being said, we are pleased to have a wide-ranging discussion with you over a whole host of issues that might relate to your concerns as they arise under zoning. We are not here to, as some applicants might, stuff the Dover Amendment down your throats. We want to have a full discussion so that you fully understand this project and are satisfied with it at the end of the day in the issuance of a special permit. There's been a number of questions that I've seen that have arisen over this particular project. We'll discuss those more in our technical presentation, but I wanted to set the table just a little bit so that we don't get too far afield in what we're doing here tonight within the confines of this hearing. First of all, there's been a number of discussions or questions with respect to groundwater or other concerns regarding the water supply. Well, that's a discussion that really doesn't happen here. Under Chapter 114, which is the statute, that chapter of the general laws that govern cemeteries, we are compelled to get this site approved by the Board of Health. The Board of Health has to consider whether or not the location of a cemetery in this area will have an impact on public water supplies or any tributary to public water supplies. That issue will be fully vetted in that forum. It is really outside of the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Appeals. We're happy to touch on that issue during the course of our presentation, but it's really going to happen in another forum. There are other areas of regulation that could possibly apply. For example, your cemetery association, I believe, or your cemetery commission has rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations largely apply to public cemeteries in town. We are happy to, and we concede and will agree to comply with those regulations. For example, it is my understanding that those regulations include a method of burial and a type of casket, or we will comply with all those. I know that there were concerns raised on the great internet about how these burials may occur at this particular cemetery. We are happy to do what every other public cemetery does in town by way of regulation through the Cemetery Commission here. I've heard concerns regarding traffic. We'll talk more about it, but we are right around the corner from another cemetery that I think, based on statistics, has about 15 burials a year. Our experience here with this particular applicant, who already has a cemetery in the town of Enfield, Connecticut, and just needs a cemetery a little bit closer so that its members can have a more convenient place to bury loved ones. Our experience is that we do about 9 to 10 burials a year, so less even than that. And we actually have a letter, which I'm happy to give you in a little bit, from the mayor of Enfield talking about traffic impacts and how they're virtually negligible. Furthermore, and we're happy to discuss this a little bit more, our burials for the society are not huge affairs. The ceremony or the process by which we get people to the graveyard there's really more of a process at the mosque itself. When we get out to the cemetery itself for burial purposes, it's really just family. During the weekdays, 4 or 5 people. During a weekend burial might be 10 people. So it's very minimal, and we have the ability to accommodate parking for all of that. It's a very straightforward process. I am happy to answer any host of questions on the Dover Amendment or any of the other concerns that we've seen on the roadside. I will point out, as you'll see too, that in terms of how this facility may look, there are no gravestones. The markers will be flush with the ground. So there, again, are no structures. The front of the site will remain in a vegetated state that will be shielded from view from the roadway itself. So it'll be invisible to passersby in any event. So with that, I think I will turn the mic back over, unless the board itself or council has any questions for me on any of the legal processes.
Any questions?
Not at this time.
Chairman, I just wanted to make a point, if I may, in response to Attorney Tallerman's representation that this is covered by the so-called Dover Amendment, Chapter 48, Section 3. I would point out that the building inspector on January 7th issued a letter that the bylaws allow a cemetery in a Res 87 zone with a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals per the district use table, and that he determined that the land in question was located within the Res 87 zone. A special permit needs to be obtained, and any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact him. Now, as a result of that, the applicant has filed an application for a special permit dated January 7th, 2016, pursuant to the letter from the building inspector. There was no appeal taken, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, by the applicant from the building inspector's determination that a special permit is required. So I would suggest that the board has before it an application for special permit, that you can proceed pursuant to the provisions of the Dudley bylaws that govern special permits. I'll be happy to review any information that Mr. Tallerman has before you, but essentially what he's asking you to do is to reverse the decision of the building inspector without having filed an appeal of the building inspector's decision. So I would suggest that the special permit application is properly before you for this hearing and for consideration going forward. And I would point out that the time frame for filing an appeal from the building inspector's decision has elapsed, as I believe, and no appeal has been filed. So.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, that's actually incorrect. We are not at all seeking to reverse the position of the building inspector. In fact, per the cases, we are submitting to the special permit process. There are several cases under various aspects of the Dover Amendment, whether it be the educational cases involving, say, Boston College, or the religious cases involving Bible Speaks, or this case regarding the Jewish Cemetery Association versus Town of Wayland, which speak directly to this point. We are absolutely submitting to the special permit process. The difference here, however, is that you are compelled under the Dover Amendment to consider favorably our application. What it says is you cannot unreasonably deny or withhold or use the zoning process to deny a religious use. All you can do through your special permit process, and the cases speak clearly to this, is reasonably regulate. You absolutely should issue a special permit here. We absolutely are submitting to the process. What the cases say and what the statute says is that you don't have the ability to say no. Now, again, for the purposes of zoning, and I sit in Mr. Brackett's shoes in dozens and dozens of towns, and I've done this drill many, many times. It can be frustrating, which is why we intend to make you completely satisfied with any issues that you have with respect to the issues that you can regulate, whether it be parking, whether it be traffic, whether it be drainage, whether it be anything else that may arise legitimately under your zoning process as abridged by the Dover Amendment. But absolutely not are we challenging the building commissioner's position here. We are 100% in agreement that we have to go through the process. It's just a process that is affected and modified by the provisions of the Dover Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Paul Joseph. I'm a selectman here. I want to clarify when you say that the ZBA cannot deny. I just want to, because I could hear the mumblings and the murmurings as you could. I believe what you meant was that the ZBA cannot unreasonably deny. That's my first, I'd like clarification on that. And I've received, as I know other selectmen have, a number of calls, and they're asking us, how did the two parties come together? How did this arrangement come to be, and how did it come to be in Dudley? If you could address those questions in your overview, I think that might eliminate some later questions.
Well, I'll defer to my client on the latter question, because that is an issue that they have a better familiarity with in terms of how they got to this particular location. I'm not sure it's entirely germane to this process. As to the first question, and again, I understand the frustration that anyone would have with a Dover protected use. I represent dozens of towns, and one of the most frustrating things that I have to deal with is when someone proposes, say, a group home that may house people with records in the middle of a suburban neighborhood under the guise of the educational exemption. There are dozens and dozens of cases on that specific example. They are very frustrating for towns. The applicants for those invariably prevail. What I'm saying is that there is very, very little leeway to say no. Is it conceivable that you could, if you determine reasonably that the operation of this cemetery would cause a massive public safety issue? Yes, you could say no. But that is a huge stretch, and in the great lexicon of cases, it just really doesn't bear out, especially for a use that has no buildings whatsoever, and that for the issues of significant environmental concern is going to go through a separate and complete process, and we're submitting to that process. We get no Dover Amendment protection from that process whatsoever, and we're pleased to go through that process. It just means that all of the dimensional criteria and the other elements of regulation under zoning cannot be strictly used to deny this project. Point in fact, we're in virtual compliance with everything that you would be reviewing for a special permit anyway. And I don't think we really need any special treatment whatsoever. You are going to see, we've got plenty of parking, we've got a good and easy access for your emergency vehicles, we've got a turnaround that will easily accommodate your largest fire apparatus. It drains appropriately and no water leaves the site. There's plenty of vegetation around and buffers just surrounding property. We are not touching any of the wetlands. We're constraining all of the development in terms of the location of the plots outside of the wetlands. This is a project that even if the Dover Amendment applied, if this was a purely private cemetery, would meet all four corners of your regulation. I just think it's important, given the posture that this arrives at your doorstep, to address that issue, because I know that it comes up, and because it comes up in every town when there's a religious application that might not be instantly popular. Thank you, and thank you for the question.
Can I be heard?
Can we allow them to speak first, and then I'll hear from
It was
the...
something directly to what he had to say. I just had a question.
Okay, come on up.
My name is Gail Donahue. I live on Ramshorn Road in Dudley. And my question is, you said you're the administrator or town council for Douglas, sir?
Yes.
Does Douglas have an Islamic cemetery?
This cemetery was proposed in Douglas about a year ago, and for reasons that are personal to the applicant, I suppose, they decided not to pursue it. It was in the middle of a process. I gave the same opinion to my own board that I represent that I gave here today.
So you represented the applicant or the
No.
town?
I represented the town, and I walked my own zoning board through the exact set of cases and legal premises that I just walked you through now, that there is, to my own board, that there is limited leeway in consideration of these applications.
But there isn't one in Douglas.
Again, the applicant decided, the applicant prefers this site.
But there isn't one in Douglas.
Excuse me. Can we- Excuse me, ma'am? We're gonna let them finish their presentation first, please.
He's grossly offended me and many other people in this room by implying that the Islamic religion might not be to our liking or not very popular. How do you know that? You know any of us? You don't. So who are you to
Please,
imply
please.
something like that?
Yeah, just making a point.
Good evening again. I apologize if I repeat some of the stuff that Jay has mentioned in my presentation. The site, as you know, you all know, is located on Corbin Road. It's approximately 55 acres. It does have some wetlands around the periphery of the site, so the upland is approximately 25 acres or so. It's currently used as fields. Lastly, the last season was harvested for corn. So the proposal is to put the cemetery within the existing fields themselves and keep the outer perimeter that's vegetated in its natural state to provide a buffer. And we're proposing the road right at where the existing gravel path accesses the fields currently in this location, and with a straight roadway 20 feet wide with a cul-de-sac at the end, with graves on the left and on the side. Currently, there's an existing dilapidated barn that exists right on Corbin Road that if the project moves forward, we will be demolishing that and just providing some screening. So the only view you'll see actually from the road is the actual road, the new roadway itself. As Jay mentioned, the graves will have only flush markers with the remaining land will be all grassed. The existing land currently is somewhat flat, so no major regrading will occur on site. We'll basically work with the land as is. And then once if this moves forward as well, we are planning on submitting an NRAD for the Conservation Commission to establish the wetland lines, and we're proposing to stay 100 feet outside those lines. Also, we have obtained a copy of the Cemetery Commission in town, as Jay mentioned, and we will with the burial procedure, we will comply with those requirements as far as the concrete box and the cover itself. That's pretty much the presentation as far as the technical aspect of it. To answer, there was a question regarding why Dudley. Currently, we are using Enfield, Connecticut, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive, and it's almost at near capacity. And for the past 5-6 years, we've been aggressively looking for land. We did try in Douglas. There was a lot of wetland issues. We had to cross about 100 feet of wetland to get to the upland area. It was about a 100-acre site. But getting over that wetland hump was a huge deal. We couldn't do it through Conservation Commission. We have looked at a lot of pieces of land, and this came on the market, and it needed a little work as far as the land itself. It was already cleared, used as fields, and so that's one of the reasons we chose that piece of property.
I had a question for you. Enfield, you said full. How many sites are you looking at putting into where this location is?
We currently, like last year, we had about 9 barrier in Enfield. We're not a big community in Greater Worcester area, so on average it's about 9 a year, say 9 to 15 a year. This land will probably last another 100 years as far as if we go the current rate. We will start, the barrier will start in the front, and then as things progress, we'll move toward the back as graves fill up.
Any other board member? Any other board member?
Stephen Sullivan, I think the question was how many proposed graves in that site will hold?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I apologize. It's approximately, we could fit up about 16,000 graves in there. Do we have that? No, we don't.
Let the man speak, please. Thank you.
Mr. Fox?
Excuse me.
Hey, answer the question.
No.
No, because you don't answer the question. Answer the question like the people want you to answer the question.
Quiet, please.
Mind your business. I have won that property. You own the property, you won't answer the question. That's the whole point.
Quiet, please.
My name is Peter Fox, member of the Board of Selectmen, and I'm going to make just a quick comment, and I'm going to address it to the councilman, the attorney, that you came in and you basically told this zoning board of appeals that they had no choice but accept this. And I took a little offense to that, because they're the zoning board of appeals.
I had a question. So at the beginning of your presentation, you said the land would stay as it is?
Contour-wise, yes.
And then 3/4 of the way through, you said there'd be minimal regrading. Is that correct?
It is somewhat flat, so we're going to keep the topography as is currently.
I know, but you said you'd be doing some regrading?
Because currently it's it's used as cornfield, so we'll have to take some of the.
That's not my question.
I guess can you please repeat the question?
Will you be regrading the site?
Very minimal regrading, and we have to build the road,
So, yes.
obviously. Very minimal, yes.
To regrade it, put in roads and stuff, and paths.
Is this the same plan you submitted to us?
Yes.
It doesn't show us wetlands.
This line is a wetland from, we obtained our wetland line from GIS, Mass GIS system. This is also wetland. So we've walked the land. We know this is upland where we're proposing this, but we will be filing with Conservation Commission what they call an NRAD to establish an exact wetland line by field survey, by hanging flags. So we will be doing that.
So that's really not the official
This is an
map.
approximate location. It's from a state GIS.
But that's not the official map that we're going to get in the end.
For the wetland, no, but for the cemetery, yes.
Okay.
May we see this map? Could this be turned around for a little bit?
George, the mic, please.
Please.
Could someone turn that around so that everybody could see that? Thank you. Yeah.
And
So,
how can it be explained again? Because we couldn't see it.
sir, do you mind?
Front that you were talking
Do you mind, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
This green line represents a wetland, as well as the green line here. And these are obtained from what they call a Mass GIS system, which is a state mapping that maps wetland. So eventually, we will be locating wetlands on the ground with botanists hanging flags of the exact where the wetland is.
Where's your street? It runs
That's
through.
that's what it calls it.
There's also another pond on that land.
There's two ponds on that.
There's two ponds.
Everybody will have a chance to ask all the questions they want. Just want to make sure that this gentleman here has a chance to speak, or if he has anything to say first. Okay? You'll have your turn.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're done with the presentation.
Okay?
I think we're done with the presentation. We'll just entertain any questions.
Okay. Does any board members have anything?
I have one question. I just want to clarify. You mentioned wetlands and grading. Your proposal would stay away from all existing wetlands right
Correct.
now. You're not going to encroach on that at all, right?
At least 100 feet away, if not more. At least 100 feet.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm Jennifer Knoyer, Chairman of the Board of Health. You said that that map doesn't show the wetlands yet or anything, so it's not showing setbacks or anything as to where the graves would be going and things of that nature. Is that correct?
It does show a wetland on an approximate location.
But not the exact,
Not the
correct?
exact.
That's just something I want to know. And so it doesn't show any setbacks or where the separation between the graves, because we don't know that yet, because we don't know the exact locations of wetlands. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Well, let me clarify just a little bit. It doesn't show the exact location of the plots themselves. It shows the general orientation of the area that will have the plots in relation to the wetlands. We'll fix those lines with a Conservation Commission proceeding that fixes those lines, and our entire area where we will have plots will be 100 feet or more away from that ultimate line.
Right, and I do understand that. I just wanted to be sure that there are no setbacks on there. There are no measurements on that plan, is what I'm saying.
There's a scale, but, I mean, we could scale it off for you, for
And-
sure.
But you cannot give, what I'm looking for, and just for peace of mind, is there are no exact measurements on that plan yet, because we do not know the exact locations of wetlands. I understand there's approximate, and I understand that. I deal with exact numbers, that's why I'm asking.
And they will be exact
Right.
once at the
I
wetland
just wanted
process,
to
correct?
understood that it's not right now, that's all. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan?
I just want to say, I echo what Mr. Fox said earlier. I didn't like the beginning of the presentation. I really want to see it not get adversarial. But my question would be, I understand wetlands is a conservation issue, not ZBA, but I don't think it's fair to make an informed decision without having all the accurate information. If we don't have a map, we have a map that gives a general layout.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Valiakonis, Dudley's Town Administrator. Am I to understand then that the remaining sections of the site that are not going to be used for the cemetery would be considered unbuildable then?
Most of it unbuildable, yes.
Thank you.
Let me just, a couple things on both of the last 2 points. We are pleased to, if a question from the board is, can you provide some more exacting setbacks? Obviously, we can't fix the wetland line until we go to the Concom, but if you would like a plan that showed more dimensional criteria, we're happy to do that and bring it back to you. Well, we are under no expectation that we will satisfy every single last concern this evening. That is perfectly acceptable to us to come back if there are questions for additional plan details or requests for that kind of information. That's the kind of information that we're happy to provide.
Okay, thank you. Roger?
Do you plan on going to Concom and Board of Health
Correct.
immediately, or, I mean, just something down the road?
We're on the docket with the Board of Health.
And you
in 2
plan to
weeks.
go to Conservation?
Conservation, we have to wait for the spring so we could actually identify the wetlands. Right now, you can't identify.
Because I
the
know
wetlands.
myself, I would like to see the results of those 2 boards on the map before I approve a map. That's what I'm looking for.
You know, we're proposing the actual cemetery within existing fields, inside all the existing, currently is used as cornfields, which is all upland. So there won't be any graves within wetland, if that's, I don't know if that's the concern, but currently there are fields that are being grown as corn. That's where the cemetery is going to be, in those fields only.
And to that point as well, we would gladly, and maybe the 2 process or the 3 processes will overlap, and by the time you're ready to issue a special permit, that some of those answers will be provided. Otherwise, we would be, again, pleased. It is a special permit that we'll issue. We're not suggesting that we're not required to get one. We would gladly accept conditions such as your town administrator said. If there's a requirement for restriction against use of those other areas, fine. That is an acceptable restriction. And if there's a requirement that we never build or never have cemetery plots or roadways or pathways within the wetlands or the buffer zone, we're accepting of that restriction as well. We are staying entirely in the upland area. If you want another condition that says no use of this property may be made until the Board of Health issues their approval, that's fine too, because under the statutes, we can't open a cemetery until they say yes anyway.
I'm going to be reading a letter from the Board of Health that we received. The Board of Health has received notice today, Wednesday, February 3rd, on behalf of the Islamic Society of Greater Worcester, that they are inquiring to be on the next scheduled meeting, which will be held on Tuesday, February 16th at 6:30 in room 321A. The Board of Health is requesting that you continue the public hearing on the special permit until such time that we have completed our review. We will continue to keep you updated on our process.
Is there any other members, any board members?
Mr. Chairman, just one further question. You may have touched upon it in your presentation, but once you get your permits, what is your time frame and what is your schedule for getting this site up and operational as a cemetery?
Well, there's both a technical and a legal issue there, I believe, Greg, and I'll let the crew talk about their expectations in terms of their desire for getting it up and running. I believe, however, it's a Chapter 61A parcel.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to go through that process. That may be in tandem with other processes, but it requires obviously a notice to the Board of Selectmen and with all the rights that attach to 61A properties. So that's the legal part of it. The technical part of it, I'm not sure. I'll let Imad.
I mean, I would imagine immediately. We had a funeral a few days ago. It took about 4 hours for the folks that went to Enfield and buried the deceased and came back, which is it's quite of a trip.
So, again, if you get your permits and the Chapter 16-1A process gets resolved favorably, when do you expect that the facility would open and operate as a cemetery? Do you have an expectation? Is that a year from now, 2 years from now,
No, I'm guessing,
5 years from now?
No, this year.
Mr. Burlingame,
Just a point I'd like to make.
can you please come up, state your name?
Nelson Burlingame, I'm the building commissioner in town. A point I'd like to make, and people should be thinking about too, is I keep hearing wetlands. The water table is probably as important, if not more important. To make a proper site plan review, that should be addressed. And I guess my question to them, because they have it listed with the cemeteries, did you have a soil evaluator that has evaluated that piece of property and where your water table is at? Do you know?
We can do that.
Because, you know, I think a lot of the things need to be worked out before you
That's
make
more of a
decision.
Board of Health issue with the groundwater than this board. Okay. All the boards, no other question from any board member?
I don't have any questions. I just want one comment as we're going forward here. My name is Brian Canty. I spent almost 12 years as a cemetery commissioner in this town. And I also went through the expansion of existing Dudley Cemetery. So to a degree, I'm familiar with this process. But what my perspective of looking at this is that in 100 years, no one's going to be in this room. My concern is that if this goes through, that it's laid out, that there is effective management, that groundwater issues, are all the issues, safety-wise and everything, are concerned and dealt with, and an effective management of the facility is in place. All right, and that's one of my concerns, because after almost 12 years of dealing with cemeteries that predate the American Revolution, there can be problems.
And we're happy to provide some additional details. We already manage one cemetery in Enfield, and when we're back before you again with some more exacting plan details, we'll provide some protocol for how we maintain in terms of landscaping and management and the process to provide whatever details you're seeking. No different than in the operation of any other cemetery. The process is very similar, but if there's any, it's not, again, particularly germane to this process, but we're happy to provide those details so you can have those assurances.
Thank you.
Roger.
Is it their intentions to start in phases, or are they going to start with the whole cemetery at one time?
No, I think the intention is to start in the front part and to work their way backwards, but ensuring that at all times that the roadway is proper, that it provides adequate parking, and that it provides adequate turnaround. But
So you're not going to put all the roads in first?
the idea is that we wouldn't, but we would accept, of course, a condition that says at no time will there be a turnaround. Again, it'd take years and years, if not decades and decades, to fill up the entire area. That condition that says as we do go in phases, that there shall be a suitable surface that's approvable by the fire chief.
So you're going to do it in phases?
Yes, but they're not a set period to them. It's as it fills up. But we are totally accepting of having the fire chief approve the radius and the materials on the roadway and the turnaround in particular, so he could get a vehicle up.
Each time you go into
Absolutely. There would always be an adequate turnaround there in each phase.
Any more questions?
I don't, one lady, she had to change her hand.
In the back.
Good questions in the audience.
Well, thank you. Since it's a public hearing, the public gets to speak. I almost forgot what I wanted to say, but
Name for the
I'm
record,
sorry,
please.
my name is Richard Raymond, I live on 191 Corbin Road, and I'm a direct abutter to the land. Thank you very much. There's some questions in the room, and being most of us in here are lay people, we've been hearing the opinions of councils on both sides, that this is not a court of law, so they are opinions. And first of all, in the zoning board of appeals, who has the right of appeal? The owner of the property, or some people that don't own the property? You know, so, and that I don't know, and I asked the board who has the right of appeal. Also, the land in question by that map, I know firsthand, living up there for over 40 years, my kids played that land. I helped the present owner farm the land at times early on. I walked the land, I hunted the land. That is so inaccurate for the watershed. There is more than one pond on that land, even if the Conservation Committee wants to. We also heard the other night, you know, some discussion at the Board of Health hearing, that the watershed in there is an aquifer that goes directly down to the wellheads of Dudley, down to High Pond. Yes. Okay, so we have those concerns, whether it be conservation, whether, you know, this is not a religious question, and like others, I took exception to that as well. It's not a religious question at all. It is the land of Dudley, it's the town of Dudley, it's zoned residential right now, the property taxes are being paid for, it was subdivided, I understand, so that houses could go up, our community could grow, and all of this is being proposed is getting ready to change all of that. So there's some major decisions to be made here, all right? I'm not looking to say no, I'm looking to find out what's in the best interest of the town of Dudley, and if it is no, it's no. If it is, I don't like the fact that it was presented, even though council tried to say it wasn't, presented in such a fashion that you don't have a choice. Because I got that loud and clear, and I think everybody else did as well. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question as to who has a right of appeal, in this case, the building inspector's letter of January 7th was addressed to the Islamic Society of Greater Worcester. I assume that they were operating under a contingent purchase and sale agreement at the time when they made the request to the building inspector. As the person aggrieved by that decision, they would have a right of appeal within 30 days pursuant to Chapter 40A, Sections 8 and 15. Any other individual who's aggrieved by a decision of the building inspector also has a right of appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals within 30 days.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lynn Sclagen, and I live at 129 Corbin Road. And one thing I want to point out that is very inaccurate, the statement has been made that the property in question has been used for farming, for planting crops, etc. And that is so totally off the case. I believe the property is used for hunting. I want to know if they've gone and decided how they're controlling the coyotes, the turkeys, the deer, the hunters that follow them in there. Have they decided how they're going to manage those and keep those out of the property? It's not just a property that's used for farming and planting corn. It's a property that's used for wildlife, it's a property used for hunting, and it has for centuries, as it always has been. So I would like to ask, have you decided how you're going to manage keeping the hunters off of your property? Because even though you're going to put an Islamic cemetery there, or any type of property there, you're still going to deal with the fact that you're dealing with wildlife, you're dealing with deer, you're dealing with turkeys, and you're dealing with all the hunters that follow in there. Lynn Sclagen.
Excuse me, sir, you need to come up and speak to the mic. Then if you're not going to come to the mic, please sit down.
And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike's over there.
That would be excellent. It would. Be a lot better.
I'll speak for Mr. Gadsby.
Stevie will do my talking for me, but.
Okay. The land,
Yes.
Excuse me. State your name.
Kenneth Gadsky, Gadsky Farm.
Okay, you want him to speak for you?
No, I can talk, ask me a few questions, because the girl that said something pissed me.
We don't have any questions for you. You're the one who wants to state something.
All right, well, it's been farmland for 200 years or so, or better. I don't know what this girl is saying is just for hunting. It's not true. And that's all I need to say, but I've been renting the farm from Annabelle and Charlie for a few years. I really don't like what the hell is going on, you know what I'm
Please
saying?
refrain
But, you know what I'm saying? That's, you know, I listen to enough right now, and maybe Steve will do some better talking than me.
if you want me to finish.
Please come in.
Stephen Borowski, 161 Corbin Road, Dudley. I've lived there all my life. I grew up with the Madinsky's and everything else. And Kenny, for the last 2 years since it was foreclosed on, has been farming it. And doing a very good job, I might add. And it's been, and originally it was bought in 1900 by my grandparents. So I have a little bit of sentiment to it, but I know that's nothing to do with it. You know, sentiment only goes so far. But it used to be, I know, an agricultural preservation. In 2010, it was supposed to be a 10-year. And I know everybody says when it was foreclosed, it was dropped. But there has nothing been recorded in the Worcester Registry of Deeds lifting the covenant. The covenant is listed in 2010. The foreclosure deed and everything else is there, but it's still, as far as my humble opinion, I'm no legal expert, but the covenant should still be on for another 5 years. And the second part I have is in 1997, the town of Board of Water Commissioners had a test well drilled in that field. And it had a high radon content, and they agreed probably that it wouldn't be good to follow up on it. But the recommendation from Earth Tech from Concord, Mass, I'll let everybody have this. It says, based on the results of the short-term pumping test and the water quality analytical results, we recommend that the site be pursued as a drinking water supply. The short-term pumping test indicate it may be well capable of 200 gallons a minute. If, for some reason or another, in the future, we are looking for water resources, which is a very important thing in this day and age. If we have a cemetery there, we can't use it. We will never be able to use it. That's all I have
Please.
Hello, my name is Kathy Hurst, and I do not live on Corbin Road, but I live on Camelot Circle, which is off of Mason Road Extension. Right behind our house, we've been there for about 20 years now, and it's all DEP land, Department of Environmental Protection. So behind our house, there is a tributary. The pond, it comes from the Estabrooks Pond, which is on Dudley Oxford Road, across from the golf course. It runs all the way parallel to Corbin Road and in our community, which is also not just Camelot Circle, but all of Mason Road Extension all the way. And there are so many bodies of water in there, little tributaries. Of course, that Estabrook Farms pond runs from Dudley Oxford Road all the way through to Hayden Pond Road. So that, and Corbin Road is on a hill above us. We sit low, and all of our wells, we have private wells everywhere, it all comes down from the top of Corbin Road. So anybody living in our area is also very concerned about the effects on our water systems as private wells, and can't understand why, if that's DEP land, how a big project like that could be put on that land if all the surrounding areas are supposed to be protected land.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Louis Perrin. I'm from Baker Pond Road. Welcome to Dudley. I got a couple questions. I'd like to be informed. I don't really know a lot about the Muslim religion, but I'd like to know how the bodies are being buried in Enfield now, and if they're, and why are you willing to compromise to come to Dudley and the burial rights, which goes with contradictions of everything I've read. Why are you willing to compromise now in Dudley? And I have a few more questions when you're done, because I want to.
Okay. I'm Dr. Khalid Sadazai. I'm the president of Islamic Society of Greater Worcester. And to answer the question, that we have been using the cemetery in the Enfield, Connecticut area from last 25 plus years. The place, the person who do most of our burials, Peter, he's here. We used to do the green burial in the Enfield area. Green burial means that the body was put into the ground. Muslim burials are very similar to the Jewish and Christian burials. There's nothing different. Only thing is, the recommendation is that we don't embalm our bodies. We wash the body, put it in a cotton shroud, which is 100% biodegradable, and we put it in the ground. But later on, in Enfield, town of Enfield, people raise pretty much the same question as most of our audience is raising here about the water and other things. And they put some restrictions on us to put it in a vault. So now we are using a vault in the Connecticut in Enfield Cemetery. And as our council said, that ICW, Islamic Society of Greater Worcester, is prepared to abide by all the restrictions or the requirements of the health board for the cemetery. Whatever laws and regulations are used to govern other cemeteries in the area, we will abide by that, and we assure you that it won't cause any additional problem to the water or anything else.
One of the questions and concerns is you're not from Dudley, and Corbin Road is a very awful road to drive on. If you plan on putting 16,000 graves in there and you're saying you're doing 8 to 10 funerals a year, there's a lot of traffic on Corbin Road. My other concerns are the town of Southbridge landfill also told the surrounding the residents they don't have to worry about contamination, but now people in Charlton are worrying about contamination. I know that's got nothing to do with a cemetery, but my concern is what you say today might not be reality down the road. The same reality that people are facing in Charlton, whose property values are now worth nothing. We live in this town, our children are raised here, we are the ones that have to deal with the consequences. It has nothing to do with religion. It's about quality of life, public safety, and quality of our resources. I know a lot of people in the room are frustrated, but they're frustrated because they really don't know anything about your procedures. We don't know, I read something about call of prayer at a funeral. I don't know if that happens at the burial ground. Are we going to hear music? I mean, I don't know. I'm curious. Is that a deciding factor for me? No, but I like to know if I'm living on Baker Pond and I'm swimming and I'm going to hear crazy music in the background. It's a concern to me. But it's got nothing to do with Muslim, Christian, any. My biggest concern is drinking water, quality of life. Are the police gonna have more calls up there because it's a Muslim cemetery? Are we gonna get vandalism up there? Is it gonna put a strain on our public safety? There's a lot of concerns. And why Dudley? Why Dudley?
As I mentioned that we have been using the cemetery in Enfield, and it is about 90 minutes to 2 hours drive for the burial. And it is very strainful and very unnecessary burden on the families who have lost their loved one to take their bodies, and especially out of state. As we are the residents of Great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we want to bury our loved one somewhere in Massachusetts area. We didn't pick the Dudley area for any other reasons. As we mentioned that we pursued a cemetery place in Douglas area. When we did the survey of the land, that land was not suitable, as our engineer mentioned, to use that land. This opportunity came, and we are pursuing this opportunity, and hope that we will satisfy all the questions and all the concerns of the town members. We have to live it together here, and hopefully it will be a good situation. As far as your question about our burials are very simple. We don't have any music, we don't have anything else on our burials. The body is brought from the funeral home to the mosque, where most of the people, the community members and the family members, all come and attend a prayer. It is only 2 to 5 minutes prayer, remembering the God, the Lord who has created all us, and as you people, as everybody else do the prayers, we pray for the departed soul, and that everything is done mostly in the mosque. From the mosque, very few people, very close relatives and the friends drive with the body to the cemetery and bury it there, and there is most of the time no service in the burial stage. Even if it is a couple of minutes of silence on the grave, and that's pretty much it. There is never any music, never any loud voice of chanting, never anything else in the grave site. The grave site is a sanctity for us, as it is in all religions, and we respect the sanctity of the graveyards. Thank you.
My last comment is, I know the city of Waltham has shot this down in Douglas. As a taxpayer of Dudley, I hope we can slow this down and reach out to those other communities, and maybe there's something being left off the table that we're not seeing. Because one thing I learned after 20 years in the military, liars figure and figures lie. So let's find out, let's slow this down and talk to these other communities and see why they shot it down. I mean, they're in Enfield. Why in Enfield? Why is there, how many other Muslim cemeteries are in Massachusetts?
Finish your concerns.
So that's my concern. If we could just slow this process down and find out from other communities what their concerns were, and see if they apply to us. And I think that's fair to the taxpayers of this town.
As I mentioned that we have one cemetery in the Enfield, Connecticut, that we have been using. We can provide a letter from the mayor of Enfield town, I think that has been provided, in which he has clearly mentioned that his house is only 1/4 of a mile from the cemetery, Muslim cemetery in the Enfield area, and he has never found any problems in the area. We have not been denied by the town of Douglas, if that is I must say most of people are thinking, and there have been some concerns, that we pulled our application voluntarily because we found the land was not suitable for use. It was not rejected. Okay, so we are following the normal procedure, and I hope that there is not any other concerns. If you have any concerns, we are ready to, excuse me, here to mitigate those concerns.
My name is Jared Manzi. I live on 166 Corbin Road, which is about 50 feet from the proposed site. I have a few questions, concerns. More or less, you're willing to conform to Christian burial rites. Why not go bury your dead at a Christian cemetery? Why do you need your own cemetery if you're willing to violate jihadi law or violate the burial of Islamic people? You're willing to do that. You're willing to go against your own religion. Why not just bury your dead here
Respond to that.
in a Christian cemetery?
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me. In regards to your question about them using another cemetery, I've been doing a lot of research. And the reality of life is that be it a Christian cemetery or a private cemetery, it is the corporation or the organization that runs a cemetery that determines how burials take place. All right, so if you're not happy with, not happy, that's not the right term.
I'm not questioning.
There are,
He said he's willing to violate the way they bury their dead to bury them here, which is the law, right? That's the Board of Health law.
Primarily, we are a Christian population, and most cemeteries in this area, all right, burial procedures are in accordance with the Christian burial. They are, and their religion goes along with what you call a green burial, for which, and there is active interest in expanding this in the state. All right, so it's not just a Muslim issue, it's also just an issue with a lot of groups in the state for going to what are called the green burial. If you really get into it, it gets really technical, but the bottom line is you could decide you want to have a family member buried in St. John's in Worcester, and St. John's could say, well, no, you're not a member of this church, that church, so we can't accommodate you because we only accommodate parishioners. It's really the management of the cemetery that makes those determinations, and for whatever reasons, they are private in that respect.
Okay, so what, my other question is the property value of our houses, like,
Right.
I mean, if this is set to, if it gets approved, which, you know, whatever, you know, they go through the process, what's that gonna do to the property value of my house now, which, I mean, I just moved here 4 years ago, so my concern is, you know, should I move out of Dudley? Or, you know, is that gonna be an issue? I mean, people don't wanna live near cemeteries, whether they're Christian, Islamic, you know, that puts a damper, and I pay taxes. So, you know, should I move now, or, you know, based on what council said, that this is, you know, pretty much, you know, gonna happen. It's gonna happen whether, you know, we like it or not. That's how it came off, but,
No, I know what you're trying to say, but the only way I can respond to that was that after watching the expansion of Waldron Cemetery, in fact, that whole area has been built up with houses and rather expensive houses, so I don't think your proximity to a cemetery negatively impacts the value of your property.
so I've actually researched that. Nobody,
Again,
like,
that's-
people wouldn't even buy a house that's next to a Christian cemetery, let alone an Islamic cemetery. I mean, we've got a valid point. I mean, like, I should sell my house, I should put it on the market tomorrow, unless they want to buy my house. I mean, I'll offer it to them now, but, you know, the question is it going to decrease our property value? Is it going to,
I can't
or are
answer
we
that
going to get a
question.
tax break if that goes in?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, and I just want to make one more comment. I mean, I'm a military veteran as well. I have, you know, no issues with Islamic faith, Christian faith. I don't really have any quarrels with religion, period. But, you know, you say the ride to Enfield is too long. Well, the plane ride from Afghanistan for a dead soldier, Islamic soldier, American, you know, Christian soldier is about 14 hours. So,
My name is Daniel John Grizzoulis. I live at 169 Corbin Road. My property abuts where he wants to put the road. I have no problems with, you know, people wanting to bury their dead. I have grave concern about the wildlife that is around my house. I can sit on my porch any night during the summer and hear coyotes screaming. I'm concerned about the water table. When I moved into my property, I had a dry well. It cost me $7,000 to sink a well to 580 feet before I could get adequate water that the town approved. My question, aside from the fact that they're going to have 16,000 possible grave sites in there starting from my backyard, literally, is when are they going to take and have a permit applied for a civic center? And then how long after that do they go and apply for a mosque? Now, there are a lot of legal issues involved. I'm not a lawyer, but I take great offense at the attorney here saying, we got the law on our side and there's nothing you can do. I did not spend a great number of years in the military fighting for this country to have somebody come in here and tell me that the laws and the freedoms that I went and voluntarily served for don't mean a whit, because the politicians can change the law anytime they want. You want a Muslim cemetery? Fine. Put it in your backyard, not mine.
I want you to understand something. The attorney came in and made his presentation to us. That's his presentation. We are the people who are going to approve the special permit. We know what we can do. We know what our responsibilities are. So we're listening to you people so we can put your conditions on the special permit. So no matter what he said when he came in here, we've been advised by our town council as to what we can do.
Marcia Wagner. I've been a resident all my life. I visited the cemetery in Enfield today. I'm wondering what authority the town has as far as regulating or saying how the cemetery can be maintained by a separate entity. That I was totally dismayed when I saw the cemetery. It doesn't look like a sanctity, and it also doesn't look like they've changed their methods. There were 3 fresh graves. They looked like children's graves, and they were just mounds of dirt. And there's a lot of mounds, there are gullies, there's no way there can be grass. It cannot be maintained like the New England cemeteries that we're used to. So again, my question is, does the town have any authority to say, you're saying you're going to change your method to comply with our requests? What guarantees do we have that so that we can maintain the integrity of our town and accommodate all faiths?
Mr. Brackett.
Mr. Chairman, in response to Ms. Wagner's question, the zoning board has the right, if it chooses to approve this special permit, to impose rules and regulations and conditions on the special permit, which will run for the life of the special permit, which can be enforced in an action in Superior Court by way of injunction. In addition, the Board of Health, which is required to approve this use as well under Chapter 114 of the Mass General Laws, the Board of Health may impose certain conditions on their approval, and I'm sure that there would be consideration given to existing cemetery regulations for the current town cemeteries as well, as any other private cemetery regulations that might be applicable. And then when the Board of Health provides its approval, the final decision is made by the Board of Selectmen to grant its approval under that same statute, under Chapter 114. And the Selectmen will obviously be in a position to review and approve any of the conditions the Board of Health has imposed. And those conditions will run with the use of the land and can be enforced at future times.
Hello, my name is Christina Dobney. I live at 168 Corbin Road, and I have a handful of concerns. I honestly do not care that it's a Muslim Islamic cemetery. That doesn't make a difference to me. And I know the lawyer had mentioned we already have a cemetery at the beginning of the road and one at the end of the road around the corner. Well, I kind of feel like we already have too many. And now we want to put one in the middle of our street, and it's just odd. And I do feel it's going to affect our property values. I feel some people have phobias of living next to a cemetery, and then some people, not myself, but some people will have an issue with it being an Islamic Muslim cemetery. So I feel like it will affect our property values. I am concerned about vandalism. You know, some people are going to be opposed to it, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there's vandalism, and does that vandalism start spreading to our properties? Another issue is traffic, but per the lawyer, it sounds like that shouldn't be an issue, but it does concern me. Am I going to have an issue getting in and out of my driveway, and if I'm in a rush when a funeral procession is coming by? You know, there's just concerns. So, and I know it's being proposed. I just hope whatever's being said, like the previous speaker said, is going to actually be the case after the fact. You know, so definitely. And then the contamination of the water, I have no idea about well water and how all that works, but it is concerning me when I'm hearing possible contamination. So just thank you.
Yeah, Richard Raymond, 191 Corbin Road again. Thanks for letting me speak twice, by the way. I just want to point something out to Mr. Canty when he made a comment about housing around cemeteries, particularly on Corbin Road and up on the Ramson. You got to remember, those cemeteries are well over 100 years old. People built their houses around them. They chose to go there. The houses that are already on Corbin and Ramson right now are going to be imposed by a cemetery, not houses being imposed to the cemetery.
Bill Dwyer, 165 Corbin Road. Thank you to the board for listening to us tonight. My neighbors are all making great points, especially that last point, because when I moved here 15 years ago to this great town, I was shown a home at the other end of Corbin Road that was by a cemetery. And I chose not to buy that home because I didn't want to live by a cemetery. That was my choice. I had the ability to make that choice. My realtor took me around the corner to the other end of Corbin Road. I abut where this planned cemetery is going. And she showed me a great piece of property, which I invested in, all right, because I loved what was around, the homes, the farm that was there. And I had that choice to do that. And, you know, I'm hearing now that maybe there's 9 to 15 burials going to be taking place. Now, I'm not familiar with the Muslim religion, but do the Muslims not visit their deceased and pay respects over the years? And as more and more people are buried, more and more traffic is going to be generated, more and more people are going to be visiting, and they'll have one thing that they'll be able to do. When they're done mourning their deceased, they get to go home to their cozy houses wherever. But I'm going to be stuck there looking at a cemetery. And I don't want that depressing view of death. That's not the choice I made when I moved here. And that's why I encourage the board to continue to deny this variance and leave Dudley the way it was intended to be, as a residential community, and don't change the character of our neighborhood that we built our homes on. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Caroline Sullivan. I'm a funeral director, and I'd like to point out a few things that I'm hearing. People are saying they have concerns with the number of cars and traffic. The average funeral, it's going to be in the middle of the day. Most people are at work. You're not going to be seeing traffic as a concern there. If you do, there's going to be maybe 5 or 6 cars. That's not going to be causing you a traffic jam. You're not going to be able to knock it out of your driveways. Also, with Christian burials, it's not a law to be embalmed. So people having concerns with these human remains not being embalmed, what about all of the other cemeteries in town that are allowing that? If they're using a cemetery vault, okay. What's the matter with that? You're having the 2 cemeteries that are not very far from this land, and they're not affecting your water. Why are you saying that this is going to? Yes, there's...
Quiet, please.
It is a concern that it's going to be very close to your home, but they're saying they're going to have trees all around. You're not going to see the cemetery from your yards. It's going to be in the middle of the land. That's all I have to say.
Quiet.
Thank you.
You'll have your turn to speak.
My name is Mary Sansucci. I live on Ramshorn Road, and I have some photographs of a Muslim cemetery. It happens to be the one in Enfield, Connecticut, and I'd like to share it with these board members. I also have a zoning map, and the wells, not all of the wells, there's probably about 50 properties that are affected by this cemetery, but they're on this map. I'd like to share this with both boards. And I want to tell you, I'm absolutely appalled that on 25 acres, you could bury 16,000 people. I hope I heard that wrong.
It's 54 acres. 55 acres?
25.
The build area where the plots will go, the whole site is 55, but that includes the wetlands.
So you're 25? There's 25 acres of...
25 acres is the upland area that we're utilizing.
Another concern I have is many cemeteries enjoy a tax-free status. Would that be the case here?
Not very neat.
Non-profit.
It's a nonprofit. So you're not looking at paying any real estate taxes.
I can't hear what they're saying to each other.
He said nonprofit.
Only if you want me to talk.
You guys...
It's a non-profit enterprise, the same way most cemeteries would be a non-profit enterprise.
That means they won't be paying taxes.
So am I correct in understanding that you have no intention? Am I correct in understanding that you have no intention of paying taxes?
It's a yes.
It's a nonprofit.
Yes.
That's a yes. Okay. The other great concern I have is there's no good way to get to this 55 acres because of the narrow, windy roads that we have here in Dudley. Whether you come in from Oxford off of Hayden Pond Road, the worst road would be Dresser Hill number 2, coming off of 31, which has direct access to Route 20. Terrible road. I don't even think the school buses should be on that road. And the other question I have, probably the last one, is will you be selling these burial plots?
Should I answer it? Should I answer it?
Sure.
Please.
Initially, we will sell a couple of lots to raise the money to pay, because it's a non-profit organization, we have to raise the money to come up for the price of the land. But as the time goes by and our all the expenses on the lands are met, we may leave it for the charitable purposes, and most of the graves will be used for the charitable purposes. Yeah, it all depends how much is the maintenance cost of running. As it's a non-profit organization, the organization is not going to make any money from this operation.
I have heard, and it could be, I could be mistaken, but is the cemetery in Enfield filling up?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
So ultimately, my fear is this becomes a regional cemetery. Could you address that, please?
I cannot foresee the future, but Enfield Cemetery right now, it is coming to its capacity. They have some more piece of land. They may be considering and going to the approval process and other things to clear that cemetery area for their use. Maybe I'm not aware of that because it is in Connecticut under the Islamic Society of Connecticut.
Is there any other groups besides yours that use the Enfield one for Muslim?
I would say the people in the Springfield area and other places, they bring their bodies to the Enfield area.
How many cemetery plots are in Enfield,
I don't have any exact figure right now.
if you had to guess?
I spoke with the chairman of the board of directors there, and they said the cleared area right now is up to 80 to 85% fill.
Please don't come up and ask the questions.
Yes. Did I answer you?
I'm asking how many plots are in that cemetery.
I don't have the exact number of the plants. Yeah, we can get that information to you guys. Yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes. And to answer the question about the regional, it's a concern that it will become a regional cemetery. I don't think that so, because right now there is a small portion in the Garden of Mercy in Roxbury that the Islamic Society of Greater Boston is using for their cemetery, that they took a small portion from the Garden of Mercy to use that as their burial site. So Boston people are using that, but that is also coming because it was a very small area. And since we were using in the Enfield, we are looking for a local area. So it will be Worcester and the neighboring towns that will be using this, mostly this area.
So there's people traveling from Boston to Enfield to use that cemetery?
No, they are using in the that's in Roxbury. They have a small place in the Roxbury there, West Roxbury, that you are using it.
And I had a couple questions on these pictures, if you don't mind coming up.
Me?
Yes, please. Do you agree that these are taken in that Enfield cemetery?
What's that?
Are these pictures taken in Enfield? Do you agree with that?
It clearly says Enfield on the top.
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't think it is. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Is this cemetery regulated as far as?
I have to suspend this because we still have to see these two tonight.
I see mounded, I see all this debris everywhere. Is this monitored down there? Is there regulations you're following down there?
I'm not, we just use that area. It is under the administration of the Islamic Society of Connecticut.
We have to adjourn this.
They have given the contract of maintaining this area.
We have someone,
cemetery.
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear the answer. Yeah, you can't.
Yes.
You gotta speak in the microphone.
Can you answer that question on a mic, please?
What's the question?
I asked him if he agreed these pictures were taken in the Enfield, Connecticut cemetery. He agreed they were. I was questioning the conditions of the groundkeeping and
My answer to that was that I'm not sure, but if the person who has taken it is claiming, I am not arguing that it's not, but I'm not sure that it is in Enfield, Connecticut. But if they claim that it is, I don't want to prove them wrong. To answer the other question, who maintains it? It is under the supervision of Islamic Society of Connecticut, who take care of the cemetery. And as for my knowledge, they have given the charge of cleaning that area to a local cemetery to do that. They pay them to clean the area. So if they have not done a good job with that, I think the Islamic Society of Connecticut should talk to them. And I can bring that to their attention.
Thank you.
I have a series of pictures I took today of that cemetery.
I also have,
These are the fresh graves today. This is the cemetery. It's
You can't.
You guys show.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you finish?
I also have here
Let him finish.
an agricultural covenant that was put on this land by the Department of Agriculture on June 1st, 2010. It's for a period of 10 years. The Department of Agriculture really values this land on an agricultural base. This was put on for 10 years. I have a copy of the foreclosure deed. There is no mention of this. It's never been lifted at the Registry of Deeds. Mr. Borowski pointed that out earlier, and I'd like to bring it to everyone's attention.
Mr. Chairman, so I'm quite familiar with the foreclosure deed and the agricultural covenant. The covenant is between the former owner and the Department of Agricultural Resources, which is a state agency down in Boston. And covenant was very well written for those who aren't familiar with it. And what it said was that the 55 acres could only be used for farming, agricultural, livestock and such, and some relatively narrow related purposes. So I spoke with the commissioner, who's the highest appointed official in the office, and I also spoke with the chief legal counsel at the Department of Agricultural Resources, and they both assured me, though, that our situation is unfortunate because a foreclosure terminates the covenant agreement, and they were emphatic about that, and I have every reason to believe that they are correct, because they would defend this covenant if it were in fact valid, and they would be prepared to do so. However, the foreclosure back in 2014 extinguished the covenant.
With all due respect, it's never been lifted.
Well, again, the Department of Agriculture believes that it's extinguished. They're the ones who entered into the agreement, not the town of Dudley. They entered into the agreement with the property owner, and it is their belief that the covenant no longer exists.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name's Mark Bartel. I'm quite familiar with the rules from the Board of Selectmen, the cemetery commissioners. They don't know too much about the cemeteries, but we got a good grave digger in town, and Brian Canty probably knows more than most. But if folks have they're not really having a Muslim burial if they're going to use caskets and vaults like the rest of most people that want to go in the town of Dudley, and they're going to provide all the rules and regulations. Well, if you want to have a lot in the town of Dudley, you've got to live in the town of Dudley and be a resident to buy a lot there. So if they're going to go by all the rules, I guess they could move to Dudley, and there's room at Waldron Cemetery the Muslims that are in town could move here and be more than happy to help them.
Evening. Patrick Flynn, 43 Lyons Road. I guess here tonight, presented before the board, you have enough opposition and information at your hands here from the townspeople, and enough in front of you in regards to the special permit to deny it right now. You don't need to accept it or put conditions on it. There's enough reasonable argument here, I would see, that their proposed use is not valid under the zoning currently there. It's not in conformance with the neighborhood. And to be quite honest, if council has made the argument tonight that he's going to use the Dover Amendment to usurp any power that this board may have or the town may have, well, then let land court decide. Let SJC decide. That's where they're going to take it anyway if you deny them. Why help them out? No one here wants it. You got a room full of people. No one wants it. You have the ability to deny it. They're going to fight it anyway. If you decide to restrict it, if you decide to do anything with it that they don't want, they can use that Dover Amendment in a legal argument to do so. Courts are constantly, there's a recent decision in 2014 where the Jewish cemetery got some relief. It's going to happen. Fight it all the way. You have every right within your power to do so without being arbitrary and capricious. You have every right in the power to do so. You represent myself. You represent everyone in this room, everyone at home. I suggest you do the job, deny the permit, let them fight it. Thank you.
I think because of the hour, and we have some more work to do, we have a couple more cases. If there's no objection to the audience, I'd like to continue this public hearing until next month, first Thursday of the month, March 3rd, at 7 o'clock. At that time, we'll take more input. Comment?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Just letting him speak first.
He asked first.
Sir?
Just a point of order.
Okay.
I believe there was a question set forth to the board about acting on it tonight. You can either tell the gentleman yes, or you can tell him no. But give us an answer.
He also made a statement that makes me wonder how honest they're being. The lady asked you if this is going to be a regional cemetery. My claim to fame is not being a mathematician, but if we're going to be having people coming from Springfield, which is 35 miles away, and you're traveling 4 hours now, if we have an 80-mile radius, you mean to tell me that Muslims have a longer life than anybody else, and you only bury 8 to 9 people a year? How does that math work? I would like to know, before we go forward, I want to know what the radius is from the surrounding area that people are going to come here to be buried. If it's all of Western Massachusetts, there is no way 8 to 9 people a year die. I read the obituaries every day. That math doesn't work. I'll say it again, sir. Figures lie, liars figure.
Hi, my name is Jamie Gelinas, and I live at 185 Corbin Road. I just want to state, okay, that I have 4 kids, all right, and I also have a grandson that lives at my house. All right, our road is very windy, okay, and very narrow. At times, we find that we cross the yellow line to make corners because of how narrow our road is. Erosion is happening with all the surrounding trees, which is making it even more narrow. The town is constantly out there trying to make the road wider. Our children walk up and down these streets. What if somebody comes around a corner and because you're talking a lot more traffic on that road than already is, and there's already issues that we have contacted people for the traffic that does come through that road, that they need to monitor it because it is so narrow. And our children, there's been so many people that are in this room right now that are my neighbors have since had children and grandchildren. Marianne has grandchildren. Desiree has a little child. Okay, my 4 children. We've all grown. Okay, it is a dangerous situation.
I don't care where you have their driveway, come in or exit or whatever. The bottom line is, it's an issue for the people that already live there. Why invite more? You know, I mean, and exactly, they're not familiar with how our roads are. They're not familiar with how many kids we have. They don't know the curves. They don't know the blind spots. They don't know nothing. There's no sidewalks. There isn't. There's no sidewalks. There's nothing.
Please.
But that is where our children, and there are lots of them. You're not just talking one random house here, one random house here. There are a lot of them. And I'm opposed to it because when I bought that house, all right, I bought it because there was a farm next to it. It was peace. All right, I love where I live, but I'll tell you, if push comes to shove, I'll have to leave where I love.
Good evening. Again, no religious concerns. It's not my issue. My name is William Nocky. I live at 140 Corbin Road. And I also have children, and I also have a handicapped child, which is my concern. Along with the people I hear talking, you know, the 16,000 graves, the 55 acres, the 25 usable acres for the graves. That's a lot. It is. There are other concerns. You know, the land use, as we've heard, you know. There's wildlife in there that's endangered. There are lady slippers. There are species of salamander that are endangered that I've read about from my wildlife book from Massachusetts that I've learned about and found. I own 17 acres. I enjoy walking the lands. I see it. It's out there. If it's on my land, it's not limited to where it's growing. There are wildlife and species of plant life that are endangered. Again, also, just to be informative, from all the opposition you're hearing, we truly don't want it. There are other selections. You said you've chosen Douglas. It didn't work out for you. You're looking into Dudley. Why not look closer? The Islamic Brotherhood of Worcester in Dudley. There's land in Shrewsbury that's available. What about the old Edgemere Drive-In? Nobody wants that.
Jim Kepke, Walnut Lane Farm in Dudley. We've been farming in this town since 1910. We have about 200 head of cattle. Always looking for more land. I want to show you that covenant that Mrs. Sansucci talked about. The money was spent on that. That is a viable covenant for 10 years. I've talked to the agencies. That's a viable covenant. The money was spent to preserve that land for 10 years. That covenant is still in effect. You might want to relook at your figures on that. The local food movement is big right now. A lot of farms south of the border in Connecticut. We farm about 200 acres in town right now. We have a dairy and beef operation. Looking for more land. Why don't we make this thing as an agricultural solution to this? Make it a full-time, preserve this land as far as farmland forever. There's viable farms that will manage it properly. It's been mismanaged for a long time. It's been sat idle. There's farms that can manage this property properly, make a local food product. We are interested, perhaps. There's farms, like I say, just south of the border. There's about 4,000 head of cattle being milked just south of the border, looking for land all the time. So don't throw out the fact that this could be an agricultural solution to this problem. And relook at that covenant. It is a good covenant. Money was spent. Thank you.
We don't want to cut anybody off.
Good evening, Guy Horn, 3 Linda Vista Lane. I heard at the beginning of the meeting that the application for the special permit was made on, I think you said January 8th? January 7th, somewhere around there. So it's been over 30 days since the application. I know that in some cases in Massachusetts general law that if you apply for an application and the board doesn't render a decision in a certain number of days, that the decision can be that the applicant can get the decision automatically that he's looking for if the board doesn't make a decision. So I heard Mr. Dubois say they'd like to postpone or continue the public hearing. Do you guys know what your window of time is to make this decision?
We know what. Go ahead, Gary.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the board has commenced the public hearing within 65 days of the application. Tonight, there's a suggestion to continue the public hearing to March 3rd. The board, upon the conclusion of the public hearing, The board has 90 days to render a decision.
Okay.
So we're well within our time limits to avoid any constructive approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I was not going to speak tonight. My name is James DeVellis. I own the civil engineering firm that's presenting these plans. Ahmad Zareen is my business partner. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. My name is James DeVellis. I'm a professional civil engineer. And I wasn't going to speak tonight, but listening to this for quite a while, I felt compelled to say a few things. I also am a father, I'm a coach, I have children, I'm a business owner, I sit on the other side of the town as a selectman in another town. So I try to look at the big picture. Coming in here tonight, I did expect a lot of opposition. If I lived on that road, I would be concerned on the same things that I'm hearing tonight: groundwater, traffic, people from outside coming in, them versus us. I didn't quite expect to hear the applicant be called a liar, talking about Afghanistan, but in context, I understand it. This board has a difficult job, but from a civil engineering and a land permitting perspective, we've looked at the land very thoroughly from a zoning perspective, from the Dover Amendment, from the Board of Health, from your regulations, from the conservation, from the GIS, from the topography. I'm fairly confident at the end of the day, look, this board can vote, your majority rules, you can vote however you want. But what I wanted to say is, especially with my partner here, my heart went out to him a little bit. He came over when he was a teenager. He raised children here. He's putting them through college. One just finished. He's a citizen. And when I hear the only one person that came up to speak in favor of this, Mrs. Sullivan, who I've never met before, spoke in favor of it, it was a heckling mentality where she was getting jeered coming back. Every time that someone came up and spoke, they were applauded, and it was, one gentleman said, you heard us, we don't want it, let them find some other place. I'm hoping Dudley's a little better than that. This board has an obligation to. Quiet.
Where do you live?
So, quiet. My point is, it's a process. If it doesn't close tonight, it'll get continued. Please take the time. If there's reasonable conditions, bring them forward. These people have existing facilities. You can learn from their experiences, add conditions, but let the process go through and not just end it with, we don't want it. Because I think, quiet! So if the town wants to widen the road, that's a request that can be talked about, but rather than just dismiss that, all of the things that put them all together, we don't want it, is something that eventually is not going to succeed if it's not reasonable. So I just wanted to thank the board for entertaining the applicant, but please let it go through the process. Thank you.
Chairman, the Selectman.
I just want to state, I appreciate the previous speaker's opinion. Most of 99% of the people that spoke tonight are our neighbors, our friends, our residents. The lady he referenced earlier that spoke did not identify where she lives, which leads me to believe she's not a resident of our town. Generally at a town meeting or at a function, we require the person to tell where they live. They need consent. Chairman Slingo is more than accommodating, but the overwhelming sentiment of the people that are living here that are most affected are negative. I certainly see it, but I just want to counter what the gentleman said. The one person that spoke in support, I do not believe is a resident, does not have a vested interest, except that she identified herself as a funeral director.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a statement too, because that gentleman that you called him a liar was me. So you're an engineer. I want you to tell me mathematically how 80 miles, 9 people a year.
Talk to him.
I'm sorry. I'd like to know, explain the math to me, 80 miles radius, 9 people a year die. I'm sorry. I think he's full of it. I'm sorry. But you tell me mathematically, because you're an engineer. And my name's Louis Parent, and I do pay taxes in this town.
The application we have before you, Mr. Chairman, is for the Islamic Society of Greater Worcester. And In the past year, we've had 9 barriers that we took over to infield. And that's what we're here proposing. So those are the facts. Those are what the barriers that we had last year. And that's the community that we are serving.
Quiet. Sorry. Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I've learned as a selectman is you cannot make a rational decision when the majority of people are dealing with something emotionally. And you should be dealing with it emotionally. I was shocked to hear someone say, make a decision tonight, deny it. That is a stupid, foolhardy thing to say. The law is not on our side to deny a permit with no facts, just people's feelings. You've got to give this group a chance to recess this, gather the facts from conservation, gather the facts which these people have a right to do from the Board of Health, then bring it back, have the facts in front of them, including a clear map and the water table and everything else that you folks are saying. Let them get the facts now. Let them take and recess this and reconvene it next month. Let them do that, because you know what? When they reconvene it, if you didn't get to talk, you're going to be able to talk then, because it's the same hearing, just at a later date, and you'll have more information. Let them do that now, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we postpone until March 3rd, 2016.
Second. Motion's been made and
At
seconded.
7 o'clock.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Recess. You might want to take a brief
Can I
recess.
take a 10-minute recess?
Getting too emotional.
Okay, we're ready to start the meeting.
Which hearing are we doing?
For another day.
Which one are you going to do first, George?
France, yeah. Okay, this is a
You can share mine, whichever one we go with. I don't know which one.
We're back from the public, for the recess. It's 9:05, and it's a public hearing for Michael Dufresne's. Applicant is seeking a commercial waiver for dimensional waiver for frontage on Chase Ave from 200 to 171. May I speak?
Okay, so you have. Pretty simply, it's a lot over on Chase Ave. I was here, I think, just about 4 or 5 years ago, and I received a variance for this same lot.
Did you state your name, sir?
Michael Dufresne.
Dufresne, okay.
And I recorded it and such, and at the time, when I did the research after the fact, it wasn't feasible to build that structure at that time. So I came back this time, and I don't know the rules, I'm not a contractor or anything, so I asked the building inspector, and he said I had to come back again because I guess there's it ends, the variance ends and whatever. So I'm here again for a variance on the same property. Thank you. Here again for the variance on the same property, different building, but same property.
You said you weren't a contractor, but you're looking for a contractor's yard?
It's not a contractor's yard, sir, I guess. It's basically what I would call a business condo. It's a garage that is broken up into sections where a plumber or an electrician store their equipment and head off to work in the morning and drop their things off at night.
Did you own this property when it was subdivided?
No.
So essentially, this would be like a business condo type thing?
Yes.
So to just clarify, so you purchased it as a non-conforming lot?
No, I purchased it as a building lot, buildable lot.
It's not a buildable lot. That's why you're here today,
That-
because it's
that- yeah,
non-conforming. So you didn't buy the whole lot, the whole parcel like Roger said, you bought just this section?
It is a parcel. Apparently, it was conforming when it was broken off. That was way back in '71 or something. 1971. So that was a long time ago.
This parcel was cut out in 1971?
That's, again, I'm not an expert, but that's what it says on the plan. If you look at,
I think you guys should have a copy. I'm sorry, Adele Reynolds.
Thank you.
Speaking, Mr. Dufresne. In your package, there should have been a copy of the A&R plan that was done back in 1971. And it was Track A and Track B. And I believe it was Paul Aaron, used to own it, and they divided it. And my thought, and I think Nelson and I talked about this a little bit about it, is back then, they didn't have the 60% rule. That came into play, I think, in 2010. So back then, and when they considered non-conforming lot, they didn't put non-conforming on Tract A, which maybe they should have, like now on A&R plans, they'll cut out one that's buildable, but the other one they'll put not buildable lots for remaining land. They didn't do this on this, I believe, back then, up until several years ago, or a few years ago. Under the Dudley bylaws, it would be continuous the 200-foot of frontage or whatever your frontage is on your corner lot is a continuous, as long as that made the frontage. If it turned the corner, the front as long as it's not on a right-of-way. And then in 2010, in the bylaw, came into that 60% rule, which was after we subdivided, right before he went for his first variance in 2011. I believe that's why they sent him. Again, I'm speculating that that's why they might have sent him for the variance in 2011 for the frontage, because that 60% rule had come in.
That's what I interpreted.
So what you're saying is that the 171 and the 121 is,
What I'm saying, what? That's the frontage on each street.
Right.
Correct.
Chase has
171.
171.4 and Brandon was 121.97.
Right.
yeah.
Okay. In previous years, the frontage, the way the definitions would read in the way that we used to do it, or the town used to do it, I should say.
No, well, take it easy when you're saying the town used to do it. Because when I did it, you had to have frontage on one street. You couldn't combine two streets.
Okay, well, again, when, in previous years.
The way I read it back then, it had to be continuous on one street.
Okay, and so maybe over the years it was interpreted differently.
You interpret it differently.
No, because I could probably go back in the files and see that we had talked to town council about it, but we don't need to go there because it has nothing to do with this particular petition. He's here for the variance because that's what the building commissioner told him to do.
I guess all I'm asking, and again, I don't know all the ins and outs, I've got some help here, but it was just, in 2011, it was approved by the zoning board, same property, nothing's changed. I'm just asking for the same.
It just expired because of the passage of time?
Yes. I did record it, but it just expired because of the passage of time. So now I'm just asking for the same variance that was granted, 5-0.
Okay.
Can I clarify something? When he says that the party's leaving out, that variance was for one or two family structure. This is for commercial buildings.
Yeah, you can build a single-family house on that lot.
Sure.
Right now. Without nothing.
Right, yeah,
But you're asking us in effect to turn it into a business for you.
The first thing is that
Mr. Dubois is right. You didn't even need a variance in 2007. Why it was given, I don't know.
Well, probably for the two-family.
Two-family, right.
Yeah, okay.
You can only put a single family there.
It's two-family, but I guess I'm going back to it's zone business. That's the zoning for that property. It's not zone residential.
You can build on it. You use Res 10 right now. You can build a single-family house on it.
Right.
So if we don't give you the variance, we're not creating a useless lot for you. It's still a usable lot.
Okay, but at this point, that's not what I'd prefer to put there, but and that's your consideration, I understand that.
I'm looking at the people surrounding it, it's all apartment houses, and I'm looking at the kind of noise you might generate for the people.
I thought it would be less intrusive to the town, less obtrusive, because there'll be nobody living there. There'll be people there in the morning heading off to the job, and people coming back to drop their trucks and put things off at night and go home. So, I mean, there's no kids to go to school. There's no, services as far as the town goes. So, I'm just stating my case from my perspective. That's all.
Are there any other questions from the board?
It's zone business?
Huh?
It's zone business?
It's zone business, yeah, but you can build a house.
Yeah, business 15.
Okay. Are there any abutters?
Good evening, Ed Nidbala, 3234 Chase Ave, also representing another 5 families or so over on Daniel Street that also received notification on this. Yeah, I mean, just have some concerns and questions. I was just curious what the applicant's background was. It's kind of an ambiguous use, a contractor law. Do you have any affiliation with any other corporation?
I work for LKQ Corporation.
Which is a junkyard?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
Auto parts?
All kinds of auto parts.
Okay.
New, used, aftermarket, recycled, reconditioned, everything, yes. But this has, I mean, in relevance, where I work to what this is there's no relevance.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to clarify.
No, that's
because the use, I checked with the office and the use was very ambiguous, contractor's law, that could be anything. We've already got issues on Chase Ave with a 10-wheel dump truck that's parked on the side of the road and has been there for months, starting up, idling, dieseling, keeping people awake. Your comment about disruptions not affecting people during the day, they're going to be affecting people if the use that you indicated goes through at 5:30 in the morning when people are still probably sleeping. So this variance actually pushes the potential 30 feet closer to number 30 Chase Ave, which we own. So we have a lot of issues with just that parcel specifically, and not only the other ones around. But the other issues, we were in some dialogue several years ago, not you and I, but us, regarding that purchase of that lot with a prior broker. And my understanding, and maybe this has changed, my understanding was there was a sewer line crossing that lot. Do we know if that's the case?
That is the case.
So, if I remember this correctly, there's a sewer line coming from the abutter on Brandon.
Aaron.
Crossing that parcel.
Correct.
How do you intend to remediate the location of that or deal with that?
I could grant him an easement for that sewer line that goes through the property.
I'm not sure how you'd excavate with a sewer line. There's a 5,000 square foot building, that's roughly what, 100 by 50? Wouldn't you be excavating kind of right where that sewer line is?
Well, I'm not sure it's all relevant, but you could certainly move that sewer line. That's within the law. Relocate it.
When we last looked at the possibilities of doing something to this lot, that sewer line was a problem, and I
spoke to the owner.
We have concerns about excavating and excavating, over a sewer line.
I spoke to the owner of the property, and he had no problem with that, Mr. Aaron.
Well, he's trying to sell the property too.
No, he's not. It's sold. It's been sold since 2006.
Correct, and he also told us that too. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it. Again, if you seek to grant this, I'd like to see the plans. Are you proposing any fencing or wall between this parcel and 30 Chase?
I think that whatever the planning board would determine at that point.
Can I just clarify? Let me just clarify. Okay. I forget your last name.
Ed Nidbala.
Okay. If the variance goes through, he still has to go through a whole planning board process for a special permit, which you'll be notified again as an abutter. That's where they'll look at. Right now, there's a table in the zoning bylaw for specific uses that are permitted in that business district. And when he goes to the planning board, they'll be looking more closely at what exactly he's proposing, because then you have to look at parking and all the other aspects of the actual.
I want these concerns aired here.
No, I understand that, but I'm just trying to.
What is your name? I'm sorry.
I
didn't catch his attorney or?
No.
Partner. Okay. All right. No. I appreciate that. Thank you. But again, that's our concern. Noise. Again, we've got a lot of activity across the street in that mill right now that wasn't there before. I'm trying to plow snow at midnight, and there's a rave going on with people walking down the street in the middle of the road. It's a lot to manage, and this is going to be a lot more to manage too. And to me, the use is very ambiguous. It's open-ended. It can be anything. A construction lot. I have an office condo myself. I know what the demand for commercial property is. we have a lot of reservations on this, so,
Thank you.
thank you.
Another point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, is from history, and Adele and I talked about this. The property was bought 2/12/07 from that Paul and Joy Arendt. The problem being, at that point, they divided the property. They took a conforming lot and made it into 2 non-conforming lots, which through the merger law in 48 is illegal. My opinion at this point, because of that, that is a non-buildable lot. My advice to you would be to absolutely not give a variance, because legally you cannot do it.
I think there's
But that's my opinion. I mean, you can you can talk to town council, whatever you want to do, but I'm telling you how I look at it.
Roger?
Are you aware that that building violates the lot coverage? Business 15?
Well, again, we haven't really gotten that, right now,
Well, what
we're
you're-
for the variance.
What you're showing us violates the footprint.
And when we get to the actual design, if and when he gets to the actual design process, all those things would be have to take into consideration.
If we can attach conditions to this variance that says no car parts to be sold there, no car parts to be dismantled there.
Absolutely.
What is GEMS LLC?
That's called, short, it's an LLC. It stands for my wife's name, Joanne, my former business partner's name, Elaine, my name, Mike, and her
Yeah,
husband,
but
Steve.
what does it do? What kind of business is it?
It's not a business, it's just the real estate. That's the only piece of property that is in the, it's a liability company. So if somebody got hurt or whatever, as far as the insurance goes, the lot's been sitting empty for that long. So there's no other, you can look it up, it's public knowledge, there's no other properties in it. It's just a limited liability. Let me just go back to one thing. Again, I don't understand this, but Nelson was mentioning that in 2007 this was subdivided. This was 1971. It was sold in 2007. This was subdivided in 1971.
Can I, another point of clarity? I agree with that, but the date that matters is the date that it was sold, because one person owned both of them. That's the whole problem. And that's why it's automatically merged. It doesn't matter if it's on paper. It's automatically, like I say, if they vote tonight to give you a variance, it is illegal, in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. And my advice to you would be to check with town council first if you want.
It's already been voted once. The variance has already been granted once.
Is there any more questions? I'll close the public hearing at 9:23.
Second. Make a motion. All those in favor? To close the public hearing.
Okay. Close the public hearing?
I second the motion.
Okay.
Oh, I make a motion that we close the public hearing. I make the motion.
Okay. I'll second. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Anybody want to make a motion, or do you want to think about this, chew on this, and check some?
Well, I am concerned in the fact that I did bring it up before Nelson, and then Nelson confirmed it. But I'd like to have council tell me, you know, at one point it was conforming, whether he purchased it or not. And then all of a sudden it's not conforming, all right?
Well, it depends how you look at it. It's a conforming lot for a single-family house.
That's fine, but not for what he wants, right?
So they could have sold it, they could have sold that lot for a single-family house.
With the intention of that?
He probably bought it as a single-family house, and now he wants to turn it into business use. And that's what the variance is for.
Right.
And I'm concerned about the people in the area because it's all houses.
My original understanding is that you have a variance, you came before this board, previous board,
But that was for a two-family house.
for a two-family house.
Correct, but the way I understand it, when I spoke with Nelson, it was that even though I recorded it, I thought that it stayed, but it doesn't stay, I guess, after, was it 2 years or? 2 years, it's null and void at that point.
Because you didn't build the two-family
Because
house.
I didn't build it right.
Okay, that's why you got the variance, all right. All right,
The-
now he
the
wants a
two-family
variance
house.
for a two-family house. And now he wants a variance for a commercial building.
Right.
Which is totally the opposite. If he was asking us for the two-family, that's a good possibility, we'd say, okay.
I make a motion that,
Totally different.
I make a motion that we deny the variance.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can always come back and build a house there.
Okay, thank you.
George, are we still getting engineered plans, or do we just accept plans that anybody draws?
I haven't even seen that.
Huh?
What plan? I never saw those.
Yes.
Where's the hedge? Where is the hedge?
Yeah.
Where's the hedge?
Where the garage is.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, you changed his mind.
So we can't.
And everyone else is in, is,
Hey, I know, you know, when you're selling, I want to make mine a business thing.
What's this one?
That's what they want, the garage.
yeah,
They want to turn the garage into an apartment.
Yeah, we need engineered plans.
Hey.
Doing some kind of hardship.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, open a public hearing for, at 9:27 for Mehat Morgan, seeking a residential special permit to convert existing garage into owner's living quarters.
They don't even have enough of what they got.
Yes. Did Gloria give you the letter? I got a fax letter today. Him and his wife were planning on being at the meeting, here at the public hearing.
Yes.
But unfortunately, they couldn't make it, so they asked if I was allowed to represent them.
Yeah, yep. I just don't know what I do with it right now. I didn't get one. It's somewhere in my pile.
I have my copy. Want to read my copy?
Please. Okay, would you like to read that? Out loud? Please.
Dear board members, as you are aware, a special permit application to convert the existing garage at our property at 17 Pine Street into a dwelling unit. The main structure of our property is an existing three-family unit structure. 2 of the units have 2 bedrooms and 1 unit has 1 bedroom. My family and I currently occupy the 3rd floor apartment. When we purchased the property and moved in, we had 2 girls. We have since had twin boys. Therefore, the apartment is not completely suitable for our family. However, we would like to remain living on site for our tenants and continued maintenance. Unfortunately, although original planning to attend the meeting tonight, my work schedule is now prohibiting me to do so, and my wife will not have a sitter. I am requesting that you allow Adele Reynolds to act on our behalf for the public hearing. I can't read his signature.
Okay, so pretty much I think you have, I put pictures in the packet of the existing structures on the property. I also did, I have a couple copies of the Google search, so you can kind of see that where
How big is the garage?
It is 36 feet long,
36?
36 feet long, by 22 wide. You want the blue?
Please.
Plan doesn't show us much of though.
No, look, again, he's gonna have to go to planning board.
You don't even have the size of this on here or nothing.
No, it's just a budget.
Basically want to convert.
Again, it's existing garage.
We're supposed to be able to look at this and know what you're
Everyone's
doing.
got a freestanding garage.
How do you, he's got a garage next to the house, how do you do a freestanding?
Okay, is this the old school?
So everyone's got, so is that what we mean?
There's like a basketball court up there?
Yes.
Freestanding garage.
They've got
That's
a
the old
trouble, they got an aerial over
Meeting
there.
unit structure, and then there's the garage behind.
It'd be good, can we?
Yeah, it's across from that little park with the basketball. Yep. Used
Can
to
we
be a
see
school.
that?
Yep.
Please.
How wide is the garage?
I'm sorry?
How wide?
22.
22?
Yeah.
2236.
So there's a house, that's the garage. Now, does that mean that if he does a garage, you can have one on his, that's gonna make it there?
So you're planning on just going straight up?
They're not adding on into anything, they're gonna convert the garage into.
Living
quarters.
space.
Yeah, they're not adding, not going higher, they're not extending it, they're not doing anything. They're keeping
So in
the
other
structure
words-
as is, and then remodeling inside.
It will still be a separate structure then?
I'm sorry?
It'll still be a separate structure from the house? They're not gonna connect it to the house?
Unless they're required to. I mean, if that's something you want to require them to, that's entirely up to the board.
What about having two houses on one lot?
Yeah.
Is there a problem with that?
Our bylaws have always said it's one, but this is a non-conforming thing, you know.
So we're
I don't know,
extending a non-conforming use.
Well,
That's the request.
that's what they're doing, they're trying, extending a non-conforming use, yeah.
And what's the rule for us on that?
It's not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what's there.
How about anybody else got one of these?
Nobody, there's no other lot in there that's got two houses on it, that I
I think
know.
there's lots, there's structures and parcels down the road and along the road that have the multifamily with a garage in the back.
Are they gonna
As
want,
far as- Yeah, right.
That's right,
right.
but with answer two houses.
I
don't know.
are they gonna wanna turn those into houses too?
Huh?
Are those people gonna wanna turn them into houses too?
Probably.
So are we encouraging the extension of a non-conforming use? And then the people down the road, hey, everyone would love that, I'd like that.
What's the square footage of that lot?
Yeah, we know.
The lot, the square footage of this one is,
You know, I mean, what's with that? Why don't I have three?
I've never been,
Why can't I have three?
I'm not fond of houses on one lot.
That's what I'm saying.
And I always stayed away from creating that, because
To answer your question,
then
she
9,300
needs,
square feet.
18,700 more square feet.
Well, that's under, I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but that's what makes it non-conforming, because already it doesn't have the land area required under the zoning bylaws. for
Which is
multifamily.
6,000 per,
I make a motion to deny it.
Not a
I
hardship,
just don't see,
would create problems.
we're gonna end up having, everyone and his brother's gonna want 2 or 3 houses on their lots.
Second.
There's really no reason to grant.
a motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye. No hardship.
Aye. Aye.
So you made a motion to deny the
Special
request without closing the public hearing.
Gonna close the public hearing.
Oh, close the public hearing, okay, go ahead, close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Close the public hearing at 9:36, 7, 8. 9:38.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
I make a motion that we deny this request for a special permit variance.
I'll second
Such
it.
permit. Second.
motion been made and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed?
Not a good night for you, though.
Motion
It's not
carries.
all about me, it's about the applicant. Has nothing to do with me, unless that's the way you're treating it.
That just opens up a whole can of worms, and there's really no hardship.
We didn't take a vote on it. I made the motion. Who seconded it? Who seconded my motion?
He did, for the Islamic cemetery. You did.
I did?
To continue it.
Okay.
We gotta take a vote.
All those in favor?
Wait, before we adjourn, Mr. Chairman, are you going to appoint a committee to review the information on?
Yeah.
Do you want to appoint a committee to work through?
Yes,
all
I'd
this?
like to appoint a committee for the Islamic cemetery. Anybody like to volunteer? Okay.
What's it entail?
Get all the facts from the other board members and come up with find out all the facts on what
they decide.
Right.
I'll work with John on that.
Anybody else? Roger. Okay. All right, so.
I can be an alternate if you want.
Oh, I'll be an alternate too.
Me too.
But we have our 3 members. All right. We don't
This
need-
is to review all the information we got tonight, make up a list of what we expect to see on the plan, what we're expecting from them, you know.
Gloria must have some of the comments based on.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what the list can be.
Concerns.
And I imagine it's, you know, research, I don't have a problem, but researching and, then trying to find out from the selectmen and the health, what their issue's gonna be. And then we just generally.
That's where it's gonna be.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to their meeting.
That's where I figured that's, would go along.
That's where it's gonna take place. You know,
I'll go to that.
we incorporate all,
When is that meeting?
Tuesday, but if one more person goes, we've gotta post a meeting. 3 of us can't show up there.
Oh. Well, if you don't have 3, call me.
Who's gonna go? I'm gonna go. How about that?
I'll go with you.
You 2 guys go. I can't.
All right.
Well, post the meeting for that day, just to cover us.
Just thinking, do we have 2 days? We have to have 48 hours, yeah. If I do it tonight,
All right, we're gonna post a meeting?
Yep.
And then we'll just open the
Just to
meeting?
cover ourselves, we'll
Okay.
post the meeting.
Post a meeting.
what time, 7 PM,
Whatever that meeting.
It's at 6:30.
6:30.
6:30?
Yeah, 6:30.
6:30 on
Tuesday.
2, what's the date?
Did you say it was the 16th?
I don't know, you
Yeah,
give them
so-
the
Today's
paperwork.
the 4th.
I think it was the 16th.
Hello?
I give it to you.
Tuesday, February 16th at 6:30. She's watching, 321A.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, goodbye.
My monitor.
Thank God for cell phones, huh?
So 2:16 at 6:30, 321A.
In this room, yeah.
Okay. Now, what about this meeting? Are we going to reconvene
What meeting?
tonight, this meeting? The Islamic Society of Greater Worcester?
We continue
We
that meeting.
continued their public hearing,
Right.
Oh, okay.
so we're covered. We can adjourn this meeting when we're done with our business.
Okay.
Any other business?
I think we're done with our business.
I'll entertain a motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
No, I gotta.
You got anything else going on?
I'll second that.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hallelujah.
Motion carries.